Viewer discretion is advised.
The power outage / Ray Lewis's last game. Ray Lewis is one of the most complicated characters that the writers could have ever conceived of. A star linebacker, a Super Bowl MVP, a devout believer, and oh yeah, that white suit he mysteriously had to get rid of. An idea that drew clear inspiration from the HBO dramas like The Sopranos and The Wire. But it would take a fairly unrealistic plotline to get Ray Lewis a Super Bowl victory in his final game. Joe Flacco had to suddenly turn into 1989 Joe Montana during the playoffs, Raheem Moore had to jump about 5 minutes early, allowing a last-second touchdown pass to Jacoby Jones, and the most ludicrous of all, the power outage. In the battle of Harbaugh versus Harbaugh, another plot wrinkle, the Ravens jumped out to a commanding lead at the Superdome in Super Bowl 47. The tension was fading away, the viewers were beginning to tune out, and the writers had to think of something quick. Out of ideas, they decided to invoke Deus Ex Machina and throw a couple circuit breakers, taking out some of the lights in the Big Easy and giving the 49ers time to recoup and get themselves back into the game. After getting a script revision during the timeout, the 49ers leaned on their stars, Crabtree, Gore, and Kaepernick, who all scored, turning the game on its axis and shifting the Super Bowl from a blowout to a nail-biter. Fans all across the world were glued to their TVs, and not just for Beyonce. But despite the valiant comeback, the ending was set in stone. Ray Lewis had to get his, and Colin Kaepernick was made to overthrow a bizarre fade route to Michael Crabtree on 4th and goal, sealing the game for Baltimore. It was too much for Ray Lewis to win Super Bowl MVP, so Joe Flacco was given those honors, and the writers were given a cut of his 6-year, $120 million contract. Despite the charm of Charm City, I rank this one lower because of its age. But here's Tom to convince you that it should be ranked much, much higher.
So I actually was really impressed with it because I thought, like, all right, this isn't going to be like the nut. It was actually pretty damn nice. I mean, there's a bunch of things that make it really cool. I got to see like the real behind the scenes and do like the instant replay and actually do that and pull it up on the big board and stuff, which by the way, they all use the same tech and it's really, really funny. It's like a lever and then a wheel and that's it. There's like little things about M&T that make me love it so much. So for example, the place where it was built on was an old piano factory. And so like, if you look out a certain window, they have like these tiles that are set up outside that resemble piano keys and like a big piano, kind of like a little Easter egg for like where it came from. But the best thing about that stadium is the laundry room by far. And basically you walk in and it's just like industrial washers and stuff. And then there's a little side room that have like those, you know, like those beige bricks that every single like old building has, right? That you make it probably filled with like asbestos. And they're there and it's signed by like almost every major star that has ever visited there, who has played football for like the away team, like Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Dan Marino, Tom Brady. Like it's just an entire like small room filled with signatures.
Okay, Tom, that sounds really cool. Number 9, Poe. Okay. This one I have mad respect for. Now, there used to be 3 mascots, Edgar, Allen, and wait for it, Poe. My God, clever. But in 2008, and likely a cost-cutting move, Edgar and Allen were walled in a cellar and never heard from again. Until 2022, when Poe suffered an injury and Edgar and Allen were resurrected back into the lineup. Apparently, after an intense rehab, Poe made it off the PUP list by week 17 and was awarded a roster bonus. For the record, I think all these birds are ugly as fuck.
Baltimore. Ray Lewis took a plea deal to rat on his friends to save his own ass. Where is the white suit, Ray? Speaking of famous Baltimore Ravens named Ray, how is Ray Rice doing? Remember when he knocked his wife out and you guys welcomed him back with open arms before the video and ensuing PR nightmare gave you no choice but to cut him? The past. Your current quarterback, Lamar Jackson, won MVP 2 years ago thanks to a gimmicky offense that's not sustainable. He can't read a defense and has more positive COVID tests than playoff wins. Your team is the anti-Falcons. You'll always have a good to great defense, but no offense to support it. Joe Flacco's 2012 playoff run is proof the devil exists. Fuck Raheem. Poe, Ravens. I like the concept here, but not the execution. Poe is named after Baltimore native Edgar Allan Poe, who married his 13-year-old cousin when he was 27 years old, by the way. What a hero. Poe's beak looks deformed and misshapen. Perhaps he suffered it in a tragic flying accident as a youngster and I'm being insensitive? If so, I want to personally apologize to all the anthropomorphic ravens in the world. Rating 4 out of 10. Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson. It was tough to leave off Joe Flacco, especially after his legendary 2012 playoff run resulted in a ring. But let's be real here, Lamar is a better and more impactful player than Flacco ever was. In 4 years as a starter, he's made 2 Pro Bowls, won an MVP, and established himself as the best running quarterback in NFL history. The only thing eluding Lamar at this stage is playoff success, and if that ever comes, he could become a Hall of Fame. Baltimore Ravens, Elvis Grbac. Grbac was signed by Baltimore fresh off of their Super Bowl win in 2000 and was seen as an upgrade over the departed Trent Dilfer. Well, as it turns out, he wasn't. Grbac only lasted 1 year in Baltimore, putting up shitty numbers. Of course, thanks to the still elite Baltimore defense, they made the playoffs, but failed to repeat as champs after Grbac shit his loafers versus Pittsburgh in the divisional round. He never played in the NFL again. Baltimore Ravens, 2019 divisional round. I almost went with the 2011 AFC Championship game here because of the Lee Evans drop and Billy Cundiff shank, but it's hard to find a bigger meltdown for Baltimore than this. They finished 2019 with the best record in the league, and Lamar Jackson won MVP, all for it to go up in smoke in an embarrassing 28-12 home loss to Tennessee in the divisional round. They were favored by 10 points, and if not for a garbage time touchdown, easily could have lost by 20. Yeah, Baltimore Ravens, Marlon Humphrey. 2021 was easily the worst season of Humphrey's career, as he missed 5 games and still allowed 6 touchdowns in coverage. It's up now to the former All-Pro to prove that it was just a fluke instead of the new norm. Baltimore Ravens, Joe Flacco. Flacco didn't become overrated until his fluky 2012 playoff run resulted in him resetting the quarterback market forever. After signing his monster contract, Flacco's last 6 seasons with the Ravens were downright awful outside of 2014. It's become a meme now, but there were legit debates at the time about whether or not he was an elite quarterback, all because Raheem Moore misplayed a deep ball. Baltimore Ravens, Mark Andrews. Lamar Jackson is the biggest star on the Ravens, but he's not the best player. That honor belongs to his tight end, Mark Andrews, who had an All-Pro 2021 season, catching over 100 passes and 1,300 yards with 9 touchdowns. Andrews is only 27 and looks primed to be a top tight end in the league for the foreseeable future. Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson. Lamar is one of the more controversial quarterbacks in the league, as the debate continues over how successful he can be as a pure passer. Nobody doubts his athleticism or running ability, but in the end, I believe all of his supporters and detractors tend to cancel each other out. Verdict, properly rated. Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson isn't good enough to win a Super Bowl. Oh, I'm sorry, did I hurt your feelings? Let me repeat that. Lamar Jackson is a great runner who can occasionally make a good throw, but in pure passing situations, he gets exposed. Tell me, Ravens fans, it's 3rd and 10 late in a close playoff game. Your team is losing. Do you really trust Lamar to get a first down through the air? I don't. He's a dog shit playoff quarterback. For as great as Jackson is as a runner, even that comes with a downside. As we all know, running quarterbacks have much shorter shelf lives than pocket passers. So really, when it's all said and done, Lamar will have one hollow MVP on his resume and nothing else. At least Lamar is a good dude and not a murderer like the guy who your team built a statue of outside your stadium. Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson. Lamar is in an interesting stage of his career. He is in what should be the smack dab absolute peak prime of his career at just 26 years old. Thus far, his peak was obviously when he won MVP back in 2019 at just 22. So he's got his MVP, he's made multiple Pro Bowls, he has an incredible regular season winning percentage, he has a long-term contract. He's proven he can play, at least in the regular season. The only thing he has left to prove is that he can do well in the playoffs, which he has not done yet thus far in his career. And as we all know, playoff performance, whether it's fair or not, is a massive part of every quarterback's legacy. So therefore, I say Lamar's prove it rating is at an 8 out of 10. Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson. We all know Lamar's story by now. He's the greatest runner the quarterback position has ever seen, and when he's healthy, all the Ravens do is win games, in the regular season at least. But despite his disappointing playoff career, there is no doubt that when healthy, Lamar instills fear in the hearts of defenses because he's liable to go for a touchdown on any given play with his arm or his legs. He most likely will never again reach the heights of his 2019 MVP season, but he's still one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league. The Ravens' best receiver, tight end Mark Andrews, gets the honorable mention here, leaving Odell Beckham Jr. as the number 2 receiver. And as we all know, Odell is very comfortable being a number 2 receiver. Baltimore Ravens, 2020, Patrick Queen. Queen got got off to a bit of a slow start, but finally seemed to break out last year. Hit 2021, Odafe Owa. Double O had a very impressive rookie season, but somewhat declined a bit last year, leaving him in the mid category for now. 2021, Rashad Bateman has only 800 yards in 2 years and 3 touchdowns. So far, he's been a miss. 2022, Tyler Linderbaum. A starter along the offensive line as a rookie last year. He was solid, if not spectacular. So far, I'd say mid. 2022, Kyle Hamilton. Hamilton was graded extremely well as a rookie by PFF last year and looks to be a future star. He looks like a Baltimore Ravens Odell Beckham Jr. Through 3 seasons after watching Odell, I thought he was going to become one of the 5 or 6 greatest wide receivers of all time. His first 3 years were that good. Unfortunately, injuries hit and he hasn't been the same, but his name is still that of a superstar, when really the last great season he had objectively came way back in 2016. He missed all of 2022 with injury, and although I think he still has the capability of being a good receiver, the days of him being a superstar receiver are long gone, unless you're talking about somebody taking a massive dump on your chest. Alleged Baltimore Ravens, 2012 Joe Flacco. Flacco's 2012 regular season doesn't come close to Lamar Jackson's MVP 2019 regular season, but Lamar Jackson flamed out and went one and done in the playoffs, whereas, as we all know, Joe Flacco had a legendary 2012 playoff run. Shout out to Raheem Moore. In the playoff run, Flacco led the Ravens to their 2nd Super Bowl championship ever, throwing for 11 touchdowns with no picks and a 117.2 passer rating. He also won Super Bowl MVP for his efforts. Like a true American hero, Flacco then got paid a shitload of money and stopped giving any effort. Baltimore Ravens, John Harbaugh. Harbaugh is one of the longest tenured coaches in the league, and he enters his 16th season in control of Baltimore. He won a Super Bowl way back in 2012, but ever since that magical season, he's won just 2 playoff games over the last 10 years, and just 1 playoff game over the last 8 years. While nobody can question his regular season success, at a certain point I do feel like the seat is heating up a bit, especially considering that they just handed out a massive contract to Lamar Jackson. The pressure is on to win and win in the postseason, so despite his record of success, I have Harbaugh's hot seat ranking at a 2 out of 5. Baltimore Ravens. People always praise you for winning 2 rings with Flacco and Dilfer, and I know all of you Baltimore fans are just tickled pink by that, but it's actually a sign of how badly you've underachieved. We all know Lamar Jackson can't throw and is terrible in the playoffs, but what about before he arrived? Thanks largely to Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, Baltimore has had about 20 elite defenses in 27 years of existence. You guys should easily be sitting on 5 or 6 rings right now, and to be honest, you're just as big of underachievers as the Packers for only winning 2 rings in the last 30 years, but for the exact opposite reason. Your team's best player ever will always be the guy who took a plea deal so he wouldn't go to jail for being involved in a double murder. What happened to the white suit, Ray? Why was there blood in your limo, Ray? Why did you tell your homies to not talk about what happened, Ray? The fact that all of you in the Baltimore community have embraced this disingenuous pussy who hides behind religion and even built a statue of him outside your stadium to honor him is honestly disgusting.
Following a thrilling Super Bowl in Atlanta, the dark hours of January 31st, 2000 are to this day surrounded in mystery. Lying in the street, 200 yards from a nightclub, are the bodies of 2 young men. Ray Lewis, one of the NFL's up-and-coming stars, was at that club. He donned a white suit. He would later be charged with murder. His white suit has, to this day, never been found. Even after 2 Super Bowl victories and an induction in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Lewis's reputation has never fully recovered. The mystery swirling around that night has yet to dissipate. Well, let's put it to bed. What really happened the night of January 31st, 2000? Ray Lewis was born Raymond Anthony Jenkins on May 15, 1975 in Bartow, Florida. Born to a 16-year-old mother and a father who was in and out of his life, Lewis became the de facto caretaker to his 4 younger siblings, brushing his sister's hair and ensuring they got to daycare on time. As his father began to withdraw from his life, Ray took the last name Lewis from a man he was not biologically related to, his mother's boyfriend. A smaller player at just 6'1", Lewis used his wrestling background to create leverage as a linebacker at Kathleen High School in Lakeland, Florida, where his talents eventually earned him a scholarship at the University of Miami. After 3 years and a Butkus Award at the U, Lewis became a first-round pick in 1996, the second ever selection of the Baltimore Ravens. In Lewis's first 4 years in the NFL, he established himself as a force in the middle of the field, emerging as a Pro Bowler in 1997, 1998, and 1999. That year, Lewis was a first-team All-Pro selection, but with a record of just 8-8, the Ravens were absent from the postseason. Ray Lewis was free to make arrangements, so he headed to Atlanta, the site of Super Bowl 34. Little did he know, the events of that night would alter his life forever. The greatest show on turf would be facing off with the Wild Card Titans, a thrilling, blood-pumping game that reached a dramatic conclusion. Meanwhile, Lewis was riding through Atlanta in a Lincoln Navigator limousine, cruising the streets in the early hours of the morning, looking to enjoy the nightlife with friends. This celebration led them to the Cobalt Lounge, a nightclub in Atlanta's Buckhead neighborhood. Inside the club, disputes erupted quickly between Lewis's group and other patrons. To say the night wasn't going smoothly was an understatement. These disagreements persisted into the parking lot as they were departing the club. A physical altercation began with Jacinth Baker, a 21-year-old man who lived in Decatur, Georgia, struck Reginald Oakley, an old friend of Ray Lewis, on the head with a champagne bottle. This altercation escalated. When the dust settled, Baker and a 24-year-old man named Richard Lawler were left dead in the street. The medical examiner from Fulton County later asserted that their fatal wounds, precisely targeting vital organs, suggested a level of anatomical knowledge on the part of the assailant. Precise. Surgical. Lewis hurriedly departed the scene in his limousine, accompanied by around 11 other individuals, including Oakley and Joseph Sweeting, old friends from Miami. Approximately 5 gunshots were heard as the limousine drove away. However, it remained uncertain whether these shots were fired from within the vehicle or directed at it from outside. Some hours later, Ray Lewis would be arrested and booked under suspicion of committing first-degree murder and was detained without the possibility of posting bail. Meanwhile, Oakley and Sweeting had vanished. In a matter of hours, Max Richardson, an attorney representing Lewis, released a statement refuting any direct involvement in the deaths. Richardson maintained that the situation merely involved a well-known public figure, coincidentally finding himself in the wrong place at the wrong time. Following the announcement of his charges, the Ravens linebacker addressed the media. He stated, "The devil is busy, always after God's children. He is always trying to get you one way or another. And as we'll see, the devil is in the details." Let's skip ahead to the trial. Initially, Ray Lewis would stand trial for the murders, with the charges not dismissed prior to them reaching a courtroom. However, despite making it this far, the prosecution didn't seem too confident that they had enough evidence on Lewis. As the murder trial progressed over a few weeks, Lewis and his legal team reached a plea deal. The linebacker would plead down to an obstruction of justice charge, but he was also compelled to testify against his 2 friends who were involved in the incident. You could say it was a trade. Around the same time, NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue slapped Lewis with a fine of $250,000. But as details of the night came out, the court of public opinion's eyebrows were still raised. During his initial interview with the police, Lewis had not been entirely forthcoming and had also advised others on that night to withhold information about the incident. His obstruction hindered an investigation into a serious criminal event, which caused a significant portion of the public to view Lewis's actions negatively. Still, despite the plea deal, if you thought he was guilty, it seemed like Ray Lewis had literally gotten away with murder, and the fine was just a slap on the wrist. Lewis returned to Ravens training camp later that same year. Even with the magnifying glass of HBO's inaugural season of Hard Knocks, he and the Ravens were poised for a breakout season in 2000. During that season, the Ravens managed to establish a remarkable record by allowing the fewest points, 165, and fewest rushing yards, 970, across a 16-game single-season span. Their defense was nothing short of stifling, with Ray Lewis as the centerpiece. In Super Bowl 35 against the New York Giants, Lewis notched 5 tackles and knocked away 4 passes on his way to winning Super Bowl MVP. Usually that person says, "I'm going to Disneyland for a commercial." Instead of Lewis, the cameras picked out Ravens quarterback Trent Dilfer, asking him to say those 5 magic words. Dilfer can best be described as an active participant in the game. It was all on Ray Lewis. And Lewis would go on to win another Super Bowl in his final game. Another bizarre one. His ride into the sunset was an inspirational story. And despite some lingering public scrutiny, the red letter on his chest was beginning to fade, or actively be ignored. Did it ever belong there in the first place? What happened to that white suit? The incident. "I am innocent," Lewis said in May of 2000. "But of course, I've been ordered by the court that I can't speak about the case, so I won't. All I can do is sit back and wait for justice to take its course." Lewis spent his 25th birthday in a Fulton County courtroom on trial for double homicide. Just 5 years earlier, another NFL legend was on trial for murdering 2 people in Brentwood, California. There was an overriding sense that the prosecutors in that trial had failed in proving O.J. Simpson's guilt, and this time, the prosecution needed to put Lewis behind bars for the rest of his life. When Lewis took the stand on June 6th, he said that he saw the champagne bottle that struck an acquaintance, and said that all hell broke loose. Lewis stated that he tried to break up the fight. Witnesses allege that Lewis threw a punch, though no one saw him with a knife in his hand. Security guard Kevin Brown watched as the action unfolded. Jacinth Baker and Richard Lawler both hailed from Akron, Ohio. Both had criminal records. Baker for violating probation on gun possession, and Lawler for possession of marijuana. Brown's testimony seems to provide the most detail of the fracas. He recounted the altercation quickly escalated, leading to Baker and Lawler being severely injured and lying on the street in a matter of moments. As Brown took action to clear the area of people, he saw Baker fatally wounded on the pavement. At the same time, he noticed Lawler walking towards them, also fatally wounded. Lawler had been stabbed 5 times, twice in the heart. Baker was stabbed twice, but his face beaten so badly he had to have a closed casket at his wake. The incident occurred around 200 yards away from the club where the altercations began. Brown's testimony also included that he saw a knife on the ground and heard someone admit, "I stabbed him." Lewis and 10 others fled the scene, jumping into the stretch limousine. Shots were fired. Later on, bloodstains were found in the limousine. A witness mentioned that during the ride, one of the passengers discarded a white hotel laundry bag into a dumpster outside a fast food restaurant. Another witness confirmed seeing a passenger leave the car and head towards a trash can holding a brown paper bag. Prosecutors claim that the bag contained Lewis's blood-stained white suit. The suit itself was never recovered. When the police caught up with the limo driver, he was shaking and chain-smoking cigarettes, clearly traumatized by being caught in the midst of that violent outburst. Atlanta detective Ken Allen would testify that he found a small folding knife discarded on the ground next to the bodies of Baker and Lawler, matching the account given by security guard Kevin Brown. Investigators revealed that they traced the knife discovered at the crime scene back to the sporting goods store where Lewis had been autographing items on the day preceding the Super Bowl. Although a witness recounted seeing Oakley and an unidentified man with a knife, no one testified to witnessing Lewis holding a knife. Mysteriously, forensic examinations indicated a lack of blood or fingertips on the knife that had been found at the scene by Detective Ken Allen. To say Ray Lewis was unhelpful during the investigation is an understatement. Police officers testified that Ray Lewis's original police statement included a number of lies, saying he didn't know the names of the people in his limo, and that Lewis refused to sign the statement, saying he had to leave for Hawaii to play in the Pro Bowl and would answer questions later. The dust had settled. Witnesses had been interviewed, statements issued, and murder charges filed. Now, let's start asking some questions of our own. There were 3 people charged with murder in this incident. However, none of them served a single day in jail. In fact, Ray Lewis, the person who claims he is most innocent, was the only defendant to suffer any criminal consequences, a 12-month suspended sentence and a misdemeanor for obstruction of justice. Along with Lewis, Reginald Oakley, and Joseph Sweeting were also charged with murder. But the question is, why were they charged at all? The limo driver, Dwayne Fassett, provided the most damning link to the killings. Fassett told police he had seen Sweeting, Oakley, and Lewis all fighting or involved. He said he'd heard Oakley boast, "I stabbed mine," and Sweeting reply, "I stabbed mine too." The victim, Baker's blood, was found in the limo. However, nobody saw the stabbings take place, except the 4 or 5 people involved. So where was Ray Lewis during all of this? According to him, he sat calmly against the limousine while the fracas occurred. But then why later would his white suit allegedly be so stained with blood it had to be thrown away? We know that because he made inconsistent statements. He would later be charged with murder. But did the police really have any evidence other than him being there? Nobody said they saw him fighting. Nobody saw him with a knife. Nobody saw him near the victims. It seemed overzealous for him to be charged with murder. Though, here's what I think really happened. Keep in mind, this is my opinion and purely speculation. However, a good theory is needed to put this case to bed. It was a rowdy bunch of guys at the nightclub. Lawler and Baker, the victims, may have just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or maybe they played into the rowdiness and didn't know who they were messing with. The key event was the champagne bottle that struck Oakley. We don't know if this was the start of the altercation, but it led to the end. Once everyone got outside, all hell broke loose. Oakley and Sweeting weren't backing down. Neither were Lawler and Baker. Unfortunately for them, they didn't know the people they were tussling with had knives, and it cost them their lives. However, if there's ever any good advice, walking away from an altercation is the best thing you can do. Ray Lewis likely took this advice and tried not to be involved, but he witnessed what happened and helped his entourage into the limo. He probably made physical contact with either Oakley, Sweeting, or both, with blood smearing all over him. 11 people in a limo, a chaotic scene. For as highly illegal and questionable as it was for Ray Lewis to discard his white suit, it was a brilliant maneuver, especially since it was never found. The one piece of evidence tying him to the encounter, though circumstantial, was gone. In the end, when it came to Ray Lewis, he was simply charged with murder because of an aggressive, unforgiving prosecution team. They had no evidence. Even the testimony he provided in exchange for his plea deal was weak. He only confirmed the purchase of the knives earlier in the day. Oakley and Sweeting, though not what I would call victims, were ultimately defending themselves from attack. One had already been struck with a bottle, the other probably coming to his buddy's aid. It all ended badly, but a jury took only 3 hours to determine that this was self-defense, and both men were acquitted. In fact, in the eyes of every court that has reviewed this case, no murder has ever taken place. For me, even though I may joke about Ray Lewis, the truth is, he had no murderous involvement in an ugly, tragic incident. One that was ultimately proved self-defense in a court of law. One that occurred one dark night over 20 years ago. Ray Lewis is innocent. And that's what really happened on January 31st, 2000.